Hey y'all, my name is Priscilla and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a recap of the recent reads that I've read since my last recent reads video. If you are new to these videos, I talk about the highs and the lows of my recent reading, and this video will be the quarter 2. And I will also be recapping the books that I read that I mentioned in my Queer Lit TBR video. All right, so that's enough of an intro, so let's go ahead and get started. The first book that I want to talk about is We Set the Dark on Fire by Taylor K. Mejia. So this is a YA dystopian and kind of a fantasy, and it is exploring the roles of women. It's Latinx and it's super queer and its own voices for those things, and I really enjoyed it. The protagonist is Daniela Vargas, also known as Dani, and she has recently graduated top of her class as a primera, and she is going to be married into the Garcia family as a primera along with another girl that is going to be a segunda, and together they are going to work as wives to a very high-ranking government official. He is actually on a trajectory to be a president of Medio. So there's a lot going on in this debut and a lot that I am going to be praising because I just really enjoyed all of the Latinx influence in the world building, in the characters, in Dani. I relate a lot to Dani. So Dani is a primera, and Mejia really explores the roles of these Latinx girls, the expectations that Latinx girls have growing up, the sacrifices that Dani's family has made to get her to this school, to get her to become a primera, to get her in the role that she's in. She feels the weight of all of that, and she is a very methodical character. She's very brave, she's very loyal, and all of that I related to a lot. I myself am the eldest in my family. I'm the first in many respects. Almost anything you can think of, I'm the first in my family to do that. So I related to Dani, to a lot of that with Dani's character, and I think that's a big part of why I love this book so much. I also love how Mejia was able to celebrate so much of Latinx culture in this book. The food, the world building, the parallels to our real world in this fantastical world with the issues of immigration and oppression, and how this government is plotting to kill its civilians and to suppress their opinions. All of that is just so reminiscent of our world, and I loved every moment of it. And it's not without its flaws. I do think it is a debut. There are some pacing issues, especially towards the end, with the very speedy kind of resolution, kind of speeding up to set up for the next book. And there's just so much to love about this series. I love that Dani is a part of the resistance, and that also struggles with her loyalty to her family and to being a successful primera and sending money back, and the idea of a border, just all of that. I think I'm being a little bit redundant, but I really did enjoy this story. I felt like it celebrated so much about my heritage and culture that I am glad is being shared with so many readers. So next up, I'm going to talk about the Xenogenesis series by Octavia Butler. I did do a deep dive into this series in another video that I recommend you watch if you want. I do have the book. Let me get the book. So I think this bears repeating in this video because reading this series was just such a great experience. It was very challenging. It was very rewarding having finished it. I just think I'm going to think about science fiction as a genre so much differently now. I want so many people to read it and to hear what you all think about it. It is a story. It's a trilogy. There's 3 books in this bind up, and it follows several main characters over generations, over a century of time, and it follows a merging of races, of cultures, of a human race with an alien race. It's unlike anything I've ever read. It's some of the most compelling, masterful work that I've ever read, and I loved it. So yeah, that's the Xenogenesis series. Okay, next up I have The Storm Runner by J.C. Cervantes. This is definitely on the low end of my recent reads, and this is a middle grade fantasy that focuses on Mayan folklore. I did not like this book. I do not recommend it, but I am mentioning it in this video in case you did not watch my mid-year book freakout tag, which is where I talked about it a little. So in short, I hated the disability rep in this. The main character's name is Zane. He walks with a cane, and I felt like while he was very curious and witty, he was also very self-deprecating, especially in terms of his leg. I always think about the target audience for these books, and I always think if a middle grade reader were to pick up this book, that had a similar experience to Zane, how they would feel reading that. And I feel like it's just very harmful for someone to pick up a book like that. There are very plot-driven-y things that explain a little bit about Zane's disability that I hated. I wish that I loved it more because the Mayan mythology was done so well in this book. I learned so much about the Mayan underworld, about Xibalba, about Apuch, about Nawals and other supernaturals that I had no idea of, and I really want more books like that. Like, I love Greek myths in book, I love those retellings, but can we chill on those and can we get some more of these others? Because this Mayan folklore is just begging to be seen on film. However, I'm still very disappointed in JC Cervantes, and I know that there's a sequel coming out. I don't know if I'm gonna be picking that up or not. At this point, I'm just kind of burned and I don't want to pick that up, but yeah, this could have been so good and it just failed for me. So next up, I read When the Moon Was Ours by Anne-Marie McLemore. This was actually a buddy read with Kara over at Wild Book Garden, and I love this. This is a book that's been on my TBR for a very long time. I was very apprehensive. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it because typically flowery magical realism writing styles don't work with me. I much prefer concise direct writing styles, but the story here was just so great and I feel like it just hit all the right notes for me. So this is a YA magical realism story. It's sort of more of a fairy tale, and it is Latinx, and it is on voices for the queer representation and the Latinx representation. This follows a young girl named Miao who has fallen out of a water tower and is able to grow roses out of her wrists. Her love interest's name is Sam, who is a trans Pakistani boy. Most of it is a love story, with some plot here and there and some subplots that I really didn't care for, so it wasn't a perfect book for me. Some of the subplots kind of felt half-baked and underdeveloped. I would have loved to have seen the Bonner sisters do a little more in the story, like their threat kind of disappeared at a point and then it popped back up when the plot had to kind of strive towards the end, and I think that could have been done a little bit better, but the focus on the love story really soared in this, so I loved it despite those flaws. And it is a love story inspired by McLemore's own love of a trans boy, based on the author's note. So if you need any other reason to pick this up, pick it up for that because it's truly beautiful and something special. So next up, I read a book called The Book of M by Peng Shepherd. So this is an adult fantasy dystopian novel that takes place in a world where a major global event called the Forgetting has happened, where people start to lose their shadows, and these shadows actually start to make people lose their memories and their minds, and they also kind of gain these weird special powers and abilities. And it's frightening, it's horrifying, at times it's very disturbing, but it's also really exciting. And if you like books that have sort of soft magic, that have very loose and kind of convenient magic rules sometimes, but really cool things happen, I think this book could work for you. The book itself, the narrative is doing a lot. There are 4 main characters, 4 POVs, dual timelines, multiple locations worldwide, and somehow it all worked for me. All of that, all of their intertwining storylines really worked for me. They kept me on the edge of my seat. There is a major reveal that kind of had my jaw on the floor while I was in the plane, and I really enjoyed it. My favorite character was the one that was actually a victim of the Forgetting, and we see her slowly roll into madness. So I will say that I did have some issues with the pacing, especially towards the end of the novel. Half of this book is sort of a road trip, and half of it, there's this unexpected war and battle scene, and then it kind of rolls out of control at the end. Nonetheless, I feel like the final chapters have a very haunting ending, very ambiguous ending that I think I would want for this sort of, the only ending I could imagine for this story. And I am definitely being vague about this story on purpose because it's the kind of book that you can't say too much about outside of the first couple of chapters because things kind of change pretty quickly in this book. And if that is interesting to you, if soft magic systems are interesting to you, this is also inspired by real life events with Zero Shadow Day, which is a thing that happens in India. It's when the sun is like directly above and objects, people don't have shadows for a certain amount of time. So that sort of thing is really interesting and cool, and I like the whole global feel of the book, how dystopian and real it kind of felt. and believable it kind of felt at times, but also kind of kooky at times. So all of that, I just think it was balanced really well for my tastes, and it could be for yours too. Also in that reading vlog, I read Red, White, and Royal Blue. I actually was listening to the audiobook, and I ended up buying a copy because I loved it so much. And I also met the author in Houston, and Casey McQuiston is a lovely human being, and I'm so glad that I enjoyed this and that I can gush about it because it's a really, really great story, and let's talk about it. This is a new adult romance. It's sort of like a bookish rom-com, and it follows the first son of the first president of the United States and the Prince of Wales. I usually read books now and involuntarily start to think about how I'm going to talk about this on my channel, how I'm going to review this in a Goodreads review. I can't turn my brain off most times. I'm just a very overcritical thinker. This book turned my brain off. I ended up reading it just out of pure joy, for pure enjoyment. I did not expect it to do that, and I think that that's just the credit to the wonderful story here. I do think this book has just that it factor, that cross-genre appeal, that cross-audience appeal. A lot of people will really love this. It's just that compelling, that pure joy that you need in this world right now. I actually had some issues with the narrator because I listened to the audiobook. That kind of took away from some of my enjoyment. The audiobook narrator puts on accents for just about every character in this book. Alex is biracial and his father is Mexican. His dad has a Mexican ass accent that I really found cringy, and I don't think I liked it. I really did feel some authenticity was included with the Texas culture, with the Mexican representation, just living and seeing that and talking about Austin and Houston and Shiner beer and, you know, Chente and the frijoles. All of that was just done, I think, really well. I think a lot of people talk about this in terms of the hate to love relationship. I wouldn't really characterize it as that because it's more of a rivalry than a hatred relationship that Alex and Henry have, and they quickly fall in love in this book. This is mostly just a romance. I would say maybe more of a friendship to love romance. I didn't really believe the hate to love romance, so I don't know if that's how this book is marketed or not, but I definitely feel that's how BookTube markets it, and I don't think that that's entirely true. So don't go in expecting that. I love that Alex's mother is a Democrat from Texas and that she puts together a PowerPoint presentation when she finds out that she and Henry are dating, and she talks about safe sex between them. I love that Alex's dad is such a big part of his life and that he feels connected to that part of him as well. I love that Alex is questioning at the beginning of this and that he is bisexual. And I love that McQuiston sneaks in little bits here and there of queer history for little nuggets for a reader, for the YA audience maybe, to kind of look into more and to research on their own. All of that just works so well, and I love the letters that my sappy Pisces Henry sends Alex of queer love letters from history. There's so much in this that there is to love and enjoy, and if any of that sounds appealing to you, you should definitely pick it up. It's just joy, just pure joy. Now we are getting to my Queer Lit readathon and the TBR that I put up and all those reads. So the first book that I finished is Passing Strange by Ellen Kligas. This was just such a sweet, lovely novella about women, lesbians living in the 1940s in San Francisco. It's got a very happy ending, and most of that and the love between one of the couples in particular in this book really made me love it. I definitely wanted more from this novella. I feel like it could have made a wonderful historical fiction, full-length historical fiction. I would have loved to have seen all of the relationships between all these women flushed out so much more, and I feel like because of the length of the novel, it did have its flaws because there wasn't just enough time to explore any of the other characters. Also, this won't work for everyone because of that jarring shift. There is a bit of a dual timeline here, and it shifts very jarringly from the present day to the 1940s, and it also shifts in POV, and I didn't see that coming. It took me a while to adjust to it, so that definitely won't work for people. But I felt like the magic in this book, the setting, the sense of place in San Francisco, and And of course, that lovely main character relationship, the main couple, made me really love and enjoy this and recommend it. Yeah, I know that I am being very vague about this. I'm doing that on purpose because it's a novella and I don't want to give away too much, and it's sort of the kind of book that you really need to read and experience for yourself. And yeah, that's it. Go pick it up. Next up, I'm going to talk about 2 picture books that I actually picked up for my niece, and it was her first birthday, and I went to Barnes & Noble, and I usually just kind of flip through picture books that I'm buying for other people, but I actually read these, so I'm going to mention them here because I thought they were really great. The first one is a board picture book, and it's called Every Little Thing, based on the song 3 Little Birds by Bob Marley, and it is adopted by his daughter, Cedella Marley. So this is pretty self-explanatory. It is adorable. The art is very cute and very vivid and colorful. It's about a young boy that wakes up to 3 little birds singing and how everything is gonna always be all right. It was super fun. It put a smile into my face, and that's why I wanted to mention it today, and maybe you can buy it for little readers in your life so it could put a smile on their face. Next up, I read Where Are You From? And it is by, oh my god, I didn't look up how to pronounce the name, but this is from an Argentine author, and it's about a little girl that is bullied in school because people want to know where she is really from, and she turns to her abuelo, and her abuelo tells her story of where she's from. And I adored this book. This is what a 5-star picture book looks like for me. It's got beautiful, beautiful full-page illustrations, the watercolor illustrations of landscapes and of different settings. I feel like most people of color have been asked, where are you really from? At least a handful of times in their lives. No matter where you're from, I feel like everybody always gets asked this question. At least in the States, in the United States, everyone gets asked this question at some point in their life. That experience is very othering. And I think that to have this message in this book of always being from inside, from your family, yes, you are from specific places, from the mountains and from the oceans and from the seas, but you are also from inside, from in here. And that's the message in this book. And I really loved it. And I hope that my niece loves it when her parents read it to her. So next up, I have Freshwater by Okeke Emeze. So this is a book that I'm still learning how to talk about. It is one of a kind, super unique, very lyrical and very beautiful, very dark and harrowing. I don't think I mentioned in my tag video how dark this book is. This is probably guaranteed to be one of my top books of the year, so it's really hard to talk about, but I'm gonna try. So this is sort of literary fiction, sort of autobiographical, and it is about a woman named Ada who is Obanje. Emeze is also Obanje, although they use they, them pronouns. This story follows Ada as she is born, as she goes through these traumatic experiences, and how these gods, these beings, are being reincarnated in her flesh body, in her human body, and how those separate selves are separate, but also a part of her and a part of what makes her whole being. The gods within her revel in her self-harm, in her suicidal tendencies. They want her to kill herself. So there is definite trigger warnings for all of that. There's trigger warnings for depression. They want her to hurt herself so they can be released and be reincarnated once again. And the main character and the author are Ibu deities. They are Obanjes. So it's a very disturbing book. It's a very dark book, but what I loved about it so much is just how beautiful and lyrical the writing is. This book is very character driven. It is non-linear and it is sort of metaphysical. A lot of the conversations and the dialogue actually take place in Ada's own mind in this marble room that they are constantly referencing from. And it is also told from the perspective of the we, the entities within Ada's mind. I feel like I'm not really doing this review any justice, but I don't think anybody can talk about this book the way that Emeze talks about this book. It is one of the most unique books that I've ever read, and one of the most memorable books for sure this year that I've read. It manages to be blasphemous, but yet spiritual and religious all at the same time. You can handle all of those themes. You should definitely try to read this and hopefully get as much from it as I did. Okay, we're coming up on the home stretch. Next up, I have Lot by Brian Washington. This is the book that took me the longest to read, I think, out of all my queer lit reads, mostly because it's a bunch of short stories and It's the kind of short stories that you can't really binge through. I found myself wanting to take my time with it, so that's what I did. I think the only common link that these stories all have, a lot of them are about Latinx characters, some Afro-Latinx characters. The sense of place of this story and the Houston suburban setting, city setting, downtown, all of that felt very real to me. And that's why I feel like I enjoyed this book. I don't think this book will work for everyone though, because outside of that sense of place, outside of that recognition and that feeling for me, I don't know how much this will get along with other people. Washington is Black and he's queer and he's also from Houston, so its own voices for all of those things. And I think that because he's from here, because he's writing about being here, the power in the prose is in that nuance and the ability to tell a story like that. A lot of the stories are dark and scary and gritty, and it's about hustlers living here trying to survive. I will say that most of the stories I felt very disconnected from, especially with the lack of plot, with the meandering kind of writing style that some of these characters go through. It took me about half of this book to realize that one of the main characters was reappearing over and over again. I don't know if that was a me thing or if that was just the writer, the book, I don't know. But somewhere there was a disconnect for me, so I didn't enjoy this as much as I wanted to. So I think in short, I just really wanted more, and I think that that is a common thing for me recently with short stories. And if that is the biggest complaint that I have, I don't think that's really a complaint at all. So I'm definitely looking forward to more from Bryan Washington. I loved what he did for the city of Houston in this, but I definitely wanted more of a plot, more of a end and finish to some of these short stories. Okay, so the next book that I have to talk about is The Pulse Between the Dimensions and the Desert by Ríos de la Luz. So this is a short story collection from an author that I really enjoyed her debut. She is queer, she is Chicanx, and she writes stories with Latinx characters in Texas. I don't know how I feel about these short stories. There are parts and highlights. I read this on my ebook, so I was like highlighting parts that I like. Looking back at my highlights, you would think that I love this story, but I didn't find the short stories developed enough. I felt like many of them were incomplete and I wanted so much more from them. I left this unrated on Goodreads, and I don't know how I'm gonna rate this because there are nuggets of gold. There are nuggets of gold in these stories, and most of the stories focus on family, on sexism, on queerness, childhood trauma, and understanding that. And I love that. I love what she does with those themes, but I just wish that there was a little bit more cohesion in these stories. Ríos de la Luz does bizarre, unflinching stories in ways that I really love that sort of remind me of Carmen Maria Machado's writing of Her Body and Other Parties. It sort of reminds me of that. Of all the books that I've read and talked about in this video, this is probably the one that's the most difficult to recommend. I'm still trying to understand how to translate my mixed feelings about this book, but I liked some of it, did not like some of it, so it's kind of a mixed bag of stories, and it's only 100 pages. You would think that I'm talking about such a lengthier book, but some of the content is good. Some of it just didn't make any sense and wasn't cohesive at all within the same story. That's all I have to say about that. Okay, so that is gonna cover all the books that I've read recently, the fiction books. I will be doing another recent reads video for the nonfiction books that I have read over the past few months, so look out for that. But that is all I have for this video. So please come talk to me in the comments if you have read anything that I mentioned, or maybe you wanna read it now. You can also just say hi, because hi. And that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next video. Bye.